Alright, in this video, 3 tips for better mental health according to the evidence. And I'm going to try to make this video short and straight to the point. So, first one, focusing on the things you cannot change. Ideally, try to avoid it. And I know that your first instinct is to think that it's a normie cope or whatever, but it does not matter what you think or say. What matters is, what does the evidence say? And the evidence says, we have a bunch of data to prove this, that rumination, in other words, focusing on the things you cannot control and having a constant feedback loop of negative thoughts is a very strong precursor to depression. It can actually cause depression by focusing on the things you cannot control. I have multiple phalos that I cannot change. And when I focused on those, I was depressed, I had anxiety, but that was in my control. It was my fault. I have a lot of things that I can improve on. And if I do improve, I'm going to look way better. So try to focus on those. And the vast majority of people, they're set back by a lot of things that they can't control. From my experience, it's the exception that some people have an extremely short height, for example, and that's the bottleneck. On average, even for the average black pillar, for example, they're pretty close to average in terms of looks. And usually the bottlenecks are things that can change. For example, body fat percentage, nose, jaw, physique, social life, stuff like that, in my experience. And yeah, the solution is to stop watching content that reinforces those thinking pathways and to try to avoid social media in general, because the algorithms, they trigger extreme social comparison. So both red pill content and black pill content, they tend to trigger extreme social comparison. As if it's not enough to go on Instagram and see your peers that are doing better than you, because those that don't, they don't post. But also, even ignoring Instagram, you still have black pillars and red pillars forcing you extreme social comparison and making you feel worse. And making you have endless negative thoughts and making you compare yourself with the top 1% of genetics and looks. So yeah, try to avoid the algorithms. Here's one of many studies showing that rumination, which is constantly thinking about negative thoughts and usually things you cannot control, for example, short height, etc., they have a very strong link to, for example, mental problems, depression, anxiety, binge eating, binge drinking, self-harm. It's a strong precursor to those. Not just a byproduct, but also a precursor. So try to avoid them. And yeah, like I said, rumination is very well studied. Ideally, try to avoid it. Try to break the pattern by stopping the consumption of content that makes you feel that way. And it's usually a byproduct of internet addiction, usually to content that makes you feel those kinds of emotions and makes you have those kinds of feedback loops. Number 2, realize that negative thoughts are completely normal. Everyone has them, and the average person has on average 80% negative thoughts, and 95% of them are repetitive. The average person has tens of thousands of thoughts daily, and the vast majority are negative and repetitive. So what's the difference? Why do you feel depressed and they don't? Well, it's because you have them more often and way longer once you have them. And by the way, this is human nature. Back then, they had to think that anything could be a lion so that they could survive. It's a survival trait. So everyone has it, naturally. And because it's human nature, this is why the solution is, in my opinion, stay busy. So I don't think humans are made to do nothing. I think our ancestors, they were always doing something. And whenever they were not doing something, their brain was basically telling them, oh, this could be a lion. Oh, this could be a tiger or something else. Anything could have been a predator, so we have a strong negativity bias. And this applies to everyone. This is human nature. The average person has almost 100% negative thoughts and repetitive thoughts. So staying busy is the real solution here. Some people think that the solution is to retire and stay at the beach all day and do nothing. That's not how human nature works for the vast majority of people. So ideally, of course, try to stay busy, not with drugs and things that ruin your life, but try to stay busy with studying for a useful college degree, trying to make friends, being with family, working on a career that you like with a potential high salary and high sense of utility. Do sports, go to the gym, meditate. These are all things that actually improve life outcomes. So yes, stay busy, but also try to focus on those. And yeah, here are my observations about this point. If I separate the people that were constantly busy and the people that were constantly not busy, the people that were usually not busy, they had way higher rates of mental problems. And you can argue if it's the chicken or the egg. I think it's both. But in general, humans are not made to not do anything, especially if they're alone. So being alone and not busy is like the worst thing you can do for your mental health. The best thing you can do is to not be alone and not be busy all day, ideally, because excess free time can easily turn into boredom, anxiety, depression, and give you mental problems, especially if you're alone. And yeah, if I separate the two groups, the happiest people I've met, they're definitely the ones that are the most busy and also the least lonely. So try to optimize for those. And yeah, like I said, it's just human nature to not do well when you're alone or not doing anything, because your brain will be in fight or flight mode. Imagine your ancestors when they were alone and not doing anything. The brain would just constantly fire signals. Oh, this could be a problem. Oh, this could be a predator. So it's just human nature. Realize it's human nature. And the reason it feels terrible is because it's not what you're supposed to be doing. And the higher in anxiety and depression you are, the more this is true. And of course, when I mean not being alone, this doesn't just mean women. I know people think that it's only women. No, could be friends, family. And you probably know this, but chronic loneliness is an extremely strong precursor to negative mental health outcomes, as well as physical health outcomes. And this is personally my main priority in my life, because everything else that is good comes after. When I feel chronic loneliness, when I have excess loneliness, I act way more impulsively. I make worse decisions. I'm less productive. I'm less happy. And if I successfully avoid chronic loneliness, I'm way more stable. I make better decisions. I'm more productive, etc. So always try to be doing something, and always try to be with someone, even if it's not women. So yeah, that's my take. Those are 3 tips. All according to the evidence. You can fact check everything I say. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. And if you did, you can comment letting me know, and I can make a second video about it, for example, with 3 extra tips or 2 extra tips, for example, because there's a lot of things that, according to the evidence, improve mental health outcomes. It's not just looks. There's a lot of things that positively impacted. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching.